It's time for Fight News Now Extra. I'm John Pollock. On today's show, we're going to chat about some fights that have been announced for the World Series of Fighting. Purse numbers for UFC 187 have been released, and a middleweight call-out is made in the UFC. All that and more as we welcome in John Ramdine and Robin Black to the show. Fresh off a loss to Chris Weidman from this past Saturday at UFC 187, Vitor Belfort is already being challenged for his next outing. Gegard Mousasi, who just recently dominated Costas Philippou over 3 rounds, is challenging Belfort to fight on the UFC's card in Japan coming up this September. Mousasi made the call out on Twitter, stating that he has a following in Japan and he is in for the fight, providing it is a clean one. The purses for UFC 187 have been released from this past weekend, with Chris Weidman and Anthony Johnson at the top of the list, earning $500,000 apiece, with a listed purse of $180,000 for Daniel Cormier and $300,000 for Vitor Belfort. These numbers do not reflect any performance bonuses, a percentage of the pay-per-view if the fighter is entitled to that, or any discretionary bonuses from the promotion. And World Series of Fighting has announced that Tyrone Spong will make his return on Saturday, August 1st in Las Vegas to take on Mike Kyle at WSOF 22. The promotion will also be crowning their first flyweight champion on the card, as Magomed Babulatov will take on Donovan Freslow. Spong is returning from a broken leg he suffered in April of 2014. And this Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we will have our live pre-fight show as John Ramdine, Robin Black, and I will be counting down to the prelim fights from Brazil, which will be happening at the top of the hour at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, with 4 fights coming your way on Fight Network. And I'm here with the esteemed John Ramdine and Robin Black to chat some fights. Oh, of course, Robin. That goes without saying. Sometimes you have to attach labels just to emphasize the point. A few news items today. Let's be honest, pretty slow news day.
Mousasi. Let's talk about Mousasi.
Okay.
What did he do? He challenged Vitor
on Twitter. Is this a fight that has a possibility of being made? The idea that Vitor Belfort at this stage of the game is getting on a plane to go all the way to Japan, I think no, you guys will come to me in Brazil and I will be choosing who I am fighting at 185 pounds, because I think he's much in the role that Vanderlei Silva was in, where listen, this guy is not going to be challenging for titles. He's going to be doing fights that are entertaining and, most importantly, have some zeros attached to them at the end.
Sure. Is Gegard Mousasi not one of those fights? I think, he's a talent, and we saw what he did against Dan Henderson. Vitor did that against Dan Henderson. I think in Japan it makes sense because Mousasi built his career in Japan, and I think Vitor returns to Japan. We saw him fight in Pride over there. I think it would be a great fight, but I can understand if this fight doesn't happen, because there's lots of good fights for Mousasi that you can sell in Japan.
The barometer of the interest for a fight, I feel you two kind of sway things, because I can't remember a time, other than Ovince St. Preux, where there is a fight that you two are down on. So,
he's an OSP hater. No. I've been accused of being a Vitor hater. I'm trying to be honest, and honesty is a rare thing today, and I just mean that in the terms of, you see a politician on TV and they tell you a rehearsed thing that stays with the party line to convince you of an opinion, and athletes do it and actors do it, everybody does it. The truth with Vitor Belfort, and this is not a knock on Vitor Belfort, this is not me going after Vitor Belfort, but a man who has hypogonadism, as he talked about himself, that what happens is your testosterone zeroes down to nearly nothing. When you go and you apply artificial testosterone to that for years, it raises you up to the ability that you can perform, and then when you take it away, you go back down to zero. This man cannot perform with zero testosterone, so he has to find a way around that. That way may be outside of the rules, but if he can pass a test, it's sort of a, don't worry, it's all right, guy. That's how sports works. That's what Vitor has to do. Because of that, expect him to take a fair amount of time off to actually try to normalize his hormonal levels. He doesn't have natural and normal hormone levels right now. He probably won't be fighting for a while.
Yeah, and that's probably the best conclusion we make. I think Vitor Belfort is probably going to take a big step back, and at 38 years of age, it might be a permanent step back. We don't know, but certainly every middleweight is going to want to fight this guy because they see a vulnerability in Vitor Belfort at this point.
That's a great point, and that's a scary time. When you have become, instead of being this killer, you're a name that young men look at to be able to make
highly
good names
ranked,
off
still
of.
in the middleweight rankings, so he is somebody that is prime for any middleweight that's looking to catapult.
Sure, and if that's what they think, they're nuts. Look what this guy just did to Chris Weidman, a guy that you said is the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world.
There.
If Chris Weidman wasn't as tough as he was and couldn't handle the type of punches and the firepower of Vitor Belfort, he would have been out of there. And I think that it's just crazy to count Vitor out. And I know that there's all these things surrounding the professional athlete of Vitor Belfort, but if he continues to do the things that he's doing or find another way, you're still talking about a very dangerous
I'm
individual.
not discounting this guy. There are some fighters that for their own safety I don't want to see continue.
Sure.
I don't put Vitor in that category yet. I don't think he's somebody that showed us on Saturday that this is some shot fighter.
Right.
I didn't think that at all. Very much caught Chris Weidman, and I think he has things that he's going to address, but I think it will be a while since we see him return. World Series of Fighting. They've announced Tyrone Spong is coming back on their August 1st show. Always a World Series of Fighting move that we're going to run a card against a big UFC pay-per-view with Ronda Rousey on it. Also, they are going to crown a flyweight champion. Are you surprised they are going this direction after just dissolving the women's strawweight division, allowing Jessica Aguilar to leave the promotion? They're now introducing flyweights. Did you feel that they'll have better success of finding fighters outside of the UFC at 125 pounds?
Yeah, well, what they've just got to, I don't think they should be focusing on champions, personally. I think what they need to do is just find the best fighters available. Tyrone Spong, for example, is he a top-ranked 205-pound fighter? Absolutely not. He goes to the UFC, he'll be taken down by most of these guys and controlled, and I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Kyle tries to do the same thing, considering Daniel Cormier, Luke Rockhold, and Cain Velasquez are his training partners. So it's Tyrone Spong is the attraction. People want to see this high-level kickboxer come in there and knock people out. And I think that's what the World Series of Fighting needs to do. They need to focus on that. Don't worry about titles.
Action. Focus on action.
Yeah.
The best fights available, the best fights you can possibly make. They cannot go out and plan. They can't go out and innovate because they don't have access to the best fighters. All the best 125ers in the world have been picked up by Sean Shelby for the last 4 years. So that's a weird one. They have to be reactionary. That's just a fact. When you're not the leader, you must react to the landscape. And if they have a great name that they think they can sell, it makes sense. It's a tough position to be in. And, we'll see. They can put on enjoyable fights. Tyrone Spong, man, that's good times.
That is all for us. He is Robin Black, John Ramdine. I'm John Pollock. More of Fight News Now Extra is coming up.